Hello everyone, welcome to another out of praxis video on this channel show. I don't know. It's a YouTube. This is YouTube. It's on that. Welcome to it. Um, Today I'm going to be talking about repair. So conflicts, tensions, all this kind of stuff, repairing those, right? Transforming them in some cases without reactivity. So repair without reactivity. And I'm going to cover 4 moves for navigating these collaborative tensions that we find ourselves in often in our lives. And that's this video. There's going to be another video after this that I'll post that talks through some of the sociological and philosophical ideas and implications that stem from this practice. Because it's not just me blah 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 with these basic little things. They're so simple, these basic things, but there's actually a lot of depth beneath them. So that'll be in another video. This video, however, is the straight how to navigate the awkward moments of life and the funny collaboration dynamics of life, which I'll give you like a flavor of some of those that I'm sure you're familiar with, right? The first one here that's common is these little micro miss moments where something has shifted in the conversation or the meeting or whatever it might be, and nobody's really naming it or nobody's saying anything, right? But something's shifted, something's missed, maybe, right? Another one that's kind of really related with that one that I've experienced a lot, that we all experience, I'm sure, is this kind of story-making machine, right? So, a look might land funny, or somebody says something weird or whatever, and you can kind of tell that people are filling in the blanks, especially if there's funny power dynamics and someone says something maybe that they weren't supposed to say. Maybe they reveal like a strategy that's being worked on or something like this, whatever it might be. But suddenly people are like, oh, they said that, which means, okay, so the story machine dynamic, whew, very familiar. Another really familiar dynamic in this is the side channeling, right? The side conversations. So where people seem to be making sense of something, or complaining with each other everywhere else, but with the person involved in that story or that tension or whatever needs to be kind of worked on. So if any of this feels familiar to you, then I think this video is going to be for you. So we're going to move through the 4 simple moves, and this is how we kind of get to more repair and transforming tensions and conflicts into something else, not necessarily by rushing to do so and kind of reacting in that way, or by freezing up and avoiding it and never doing anything about it and reacting in that way. So the simple moves, is so dumb. They're so simple, but we're gonna unpack them. So first, notice what's happening. Okay. Second, own your perspective. Okay. Third, like I said, these are so obvious. Stay curious. Fourth, this one maybe is a little more meta. See the pattern. See the pattern. And think of this as my summation of some vital practices and methods, right? Like there's a bunch here. I'm looking at some of them, like Clear Leadership book, the relationship systems coaching stuff. All of these things are great. And I'm just kind of really winnowing it down and merging things into like, what could be the simplest way to put this? And that's what we're going to go through today. And you'll find more information about that in the description. Okay, so first one, notice what's happening. Why? Well, because usually when there's some sort of rupture or something like this, something is off, they don't always announce themselves very clearly. Some of those dynamics I mentioned earlier, it's like we're kind of avoiding looking at them, right? We want to move on. We have things to talk about, work to move through together. But what often happens, not always, but what often happens, right, is that these things linger. So here's some signals you can notice either in the moment or after the fact. Like, so after the fact, for instance, you might be replaying it in your mind, like, what was that thing that happened there? And like you're kind of spiraling a bit around this. Or in the moment, maybe you might be clenching up in your body. There might be an edge in your voice, right? Whatever that thing is, just pause for a moment for yourself and just register it. You don't have to judge it. You just have to register it. And, just kind of inquire within yourself, what happened for me? Something happened, okay? And bonus points here, if you can separate what you're observing from what you're making it mean. Bonus points. Start simple with just something happened. But bonus points if you can kind of pull that apart a bit. But really, this is where this work of repair starts. It's really simple. It's just going, oh, something happened, or something's happening here, something, right? Okay. 2, own your perspective. Yeah, it does sound pretty simple. But I think what happens when we're reacting in the moment is that we're going straight from whatever that thing is that we're sensing or experiencing into a story about it, right? They don't care. They always come down on my ideas. They always do this sort of thing, like typical blah, 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 right? So instead, we're slowing down with that what happened moment, right? And then maybe going in a bit like, what did I feel? What did I tell myself about what I was feeling? What kind of story am I telling there? What really matters to me in all of this? Because a lot of times we're telling stories because something really matters. We actually care a lot about how things play out, right? And something in that must matter, right? So getting honest with yourself in this moment is I think really important. And if we skip this, then we go from that kind of reactive moment, and then it becomes so easy to drift into these side conversations, right? Where we're just continuing to make sense of what happened, our story about what happened, with somebody else who's like there to complain with you, there to have a shoulder to cry on, whatever it might be, right? And so, yeah, if we skip this, we can more likely drift into these side conversations. And then in the worst cases, we just continue to build up more and more resentment towards these folks that we're not actually talking to directly. So owning your perspective, that second move there, it sounds like really simple things in a conversation, right? Like, I was impacted. I am impacted. Noticing that you are impacted. It's coming in with like, I don't know everything about what happened here. I'm sorting through it on my own, until I can come and sort it out with the other, whatever it might be. It's owning the fact that you're one vantage into what happened, and therefore you're going to have specific stories about that, and that's okay, but it's from your vantage, right? So this is where the third one comes in, staying curious, even when it's hard to do that. And it can be hard to do that when you have to start conversing and working through this stuff with other people, right? So staying curious while you do that. And here we're shifting from this more inward work of noticing and kind of like seeing that you have a perspective in this and that others probably do too, to the relational side of it, right? So, you might want to kind of cool your system a bit. You might want to breathe. You might want to step back a bit before you enter into the conversation, if it's happening in the moment. And really what you're trying to do is move away from the reactivity, move away from this impulse that you're proving something, right? Proving my point, my perspective, whatever it might be, to this person who's in the wrong, to wondering something. So from proving something to wondering something. So some good openers, that you could use, and there are many, of course, right? Can I check something with you? Right? Can I check something with you? When you said X, Y, or Z, I got kind of thrown off a bit. What was going on for you in that? What was your intent around that? Another one, like, where it's kind of maybe dispersed in the group and you can't really quite tell where the awkwardness is or what's really going on, where the elephant is, right? You just say something like, I felt a shift in our conversation. Something shifted. Did you notice it too? Am I right? Like checking, like, is that right for others too? You can bring impact and curiosity together, right? So you can say, like, when that happened, when this is what happened here, I felt this. It impacted me in this way. And I'm curious, what were you feeling? What were you impacted by? What were you hoping I'd hear when you said that? What were you hoping I'd do when X, Y, and Z happened? Whatever it might be, right? Curiosity in these moments isn't detachment, right? It's making space for more perspectives to come into the mix and to live side by side around the what happened question, right? And sometimes the answer is, I'm not ready to bring this up right now, right? There's power dynamics, there's all sorts of things happening in different spaces that we might be in, and that's discernment. It's not avoidance. It's only avoidance if we never ever do anything about it. If we never do anything about it, then we're in the territory of pure avoidance. But even in those moments where you have no access whatsoever, you at least have the loving kindness meditation from from Buddhism, right? Where you can work with, a projected idea of this other person to help you come into a space of forgiveness, to come into a different kind of dynamic with that relationship. Okay, so that was 3, staying curious. 4, see the pattern, not just the person. Okay, again, this one, you can start to see how things are making sense, how they're slotting together, right? So at some point in this, you start to see that it's less about you or the other person or me or whatever. It's about what keeps happening between us, between everyone. Seeing that folks in conflict are both part of the pattern, even if their impacts aren't necessarily equal, or experienced equal, felt equal, objectively equal, whatever it might be. There's shared noticing of a pattern that we're kind of in together, right? So another way into this, simple things like, hey, I want to look at how this is going between us, right? Whatever this is, right? How this project is, how the, relationship is going, whatever it might be. I want to just look at that together. And acknowledging in that too as well, like, here's a great opener into this is to be really aware somewhat of your own part in that, right? So like, hey, I want to talk about how this pattern is emerging for us here. And these are the ways that I see myself tangled up in it or contributing to it, This is the bit of it that might be mine, right? Another way in is like, hey, are we making anything up that we haven't checked yet? Is there some story making happening here that we need to like ground and like, is that real? Is that how that other person thinks? Is that how this dynamic actually is for these folks? And again, like, we're looking at patterns because we're trying to see them together, see the ways in which we're plugged in and out of those, so that we can talk about what would help us move differently the next time, right? Like what would help us shift into something else and to transform this. And here it's not really about necessarily agreement on who was right or who was wrong, this sort of thing, but more like clarity together about all of the kind of complexities of it, and also how we can move forward together, what we want together, right? And over time with this sort of practice, we build memory together in groups. This is the really lovely thing about this, is that we start to recognize the pattern sooner, right? We might even come up with names for them and be able to talk about them together and choose a gentler move together in that, rather than these moves that I think logically exclude and kind of parcel out folks because we're reacting, right? So we can look at the pattern in that fourth step without making each other the problem. And it's not to say that the pattern is the problem either, I would argue, but it's just to say that there's a pattern, right? And we're not trying to blame and get stuck in that kind of spiral together. Okay, so repair without reactivity. Really, it's about not patching things up too quickly and kind of avoiding the real conversations that need to be had, right? All the way over here to this other space of not letting things calcify and just become more rigid because no one's talking, right? Everyone's making up stories, but they're not checking it with one another. So simple, notice, own your perspective, stay curious, and see the pattern. And you don't really need perfect scripts in this, just these 4 pretty straightforward moves. Go out there, gang, just practice them, allow yourself to be a little out of praxis. And this is how we work towards repairing things together. Okay, that's it.